Well, welcome everyone. This is another ministry of Faith Making Sense. My name is Robbie Weems, and our mission here is to encourage and equip believers to know what they believe, why they believe it, and be able to share their faith in their place of influence. And today we have a special guest with us. This is Dr. Steve Cowan. Dr. Cowan got his philosophy degree, PhD, at the University of Arkansas. He is a professor at Southeastern Bible College and Birmingham Theological Seminary, and is also the editor of, now say the name again,
Areopagus Journal.
Areopagus Journal, and is the associate director of Apologetics Resource Center, and probably most of all and most important, Christian and husband and father. But if you would, just for a moment, Dr. Cowan, tell people about the Apologetics Resource Center and what you guys do, and maybe how you can help.
Great, thanks, Robbie. The Apologetics Resource Center is a ministry designed to do very similar to your ministry, right, to equip the church to defend the faith and to take the Christian faith into the marketplace of
right,
ideas, and not only defend the faith but advance the gospel in the world. Okay. And we're located in Birmingham. Right. Our website is www.arcapologetics.org. Okay. arcapologetics.org, and you can learn a lot more about the ministry and what we do by visiting our website.
You also have a blog, right?
I have a personal blog which I update about once a month.
Okay.
Kind of not my main focus, but you will occasionally find some interesting things on there, I hope.
Okay. So you guys want to visit any of those things, a great resource. I know some of the guys on staff there a long time, and they're a great resource for your church or you personally. Today, usually, I go into the studio and I'll do CD teachings. You can see it on the website there. You go to the shopping cart, you get different studies. And I did not want to do that for this topic because I wanted to bring someone in who knew more about it than I did and just kind of do an interview so you guys can watch this on the website, and we're going to make DVDs to give to people, family and friends who might be skeptical of the Christian faith. So that's why I brought Dr. Cowan in, and we're going to talk about what is called a worldview. And many of you may have never even heard of a worldview. So, Dr. Cowan, can we just start out with what is a worldview and why is that important?
Sure. Okay. Well, a worldview is essentially a framework for interpreting reality, interpreting your experience of the world. Okay. More technically, you might say that it's a conceptual scheme for interpreting your experience of the world, for filtering your interaction with the world around you. Right. You might say it's like a pair of lenses, a pair of glasses, if you will, by which you interpret the world. That's how some scholars have talked about it as in kind of a metaphorical way. Okay. That it's a way of looking at the world and interpreting the world, and interpreting your experience of the world. Okay. More precisely, though, and to be as concrete as I possibly can, a worldview is the answers that a person gives to the most basic questions that we ask, like what is real? Okay. What do we know and how do we know it? Okay. What's right and wrong? Right. Is anything right and wrong? Right. Is there such a thing as truth? Right. Where did we come from and where are we going? What are human beings? Where do we come from and where are we going? Right. And questions like that, these most basic philosophical questions that all people ponder at one time or another, and that we all have answers to, even if we've never really even thought about it. Right.
Great answer, and there are so many deep follow-up questions we could go from there. Would you agree that everybody has a worldview, whether they know it or not, by the definition you just gave?
They do. Everybody has answers to those questions. Right. Everybody has beliefs about God, beliefs about where we came from, how do we know things, is science the only way we know things, or do we get knowledge from the Bible or from some other source? What's right and wrong? Everybody has answers to those questions, and because everybody has answers to those questions, everybody has a worldview. Right. That doesn't mean everybody's thought about it, doesn't mean everybody's carefully articulated their worldview, but everybody has one. And but obviously, because we have answers to those questions, the other question you asked me was, is a worldview important? Right. Well, yes. Right. It matters whether there's a God or not, and whether you believe it.
Correct. Right.
It matters whether you believe there's a right and wrong. But it has practical implications for how you live. Right. Your worldview dictates what you believe about everything. And more importantly, your worldview dictates how you live. how you behave, the choices that you make. Everything you do is ultimately based upon the answers you give to these questions, based upon your worldview.
So what you're saying is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people would say, I don't want to get into all this religious stuff because I live in a real practical world. But what you're saying is a worldview is practical. It affects how we treat other people, how we live our life. Not only does it affect eternity, but everything that happens here. Would that be correct?
That's right. And I tell my students that even though some of these questions and the answers that we give to these questions may seem to be abstract in a way, that there really is nothing more practical than the question, what is the right worldview? Awesome. And learning the answer to that question.
So important. And folks, that's why I brought Dr. Cowan in today. Now, Dr. Cowan, let's give some examples. If you'll start with theism and maybe give 2 or 3 examples of people are saying, well, what is a worldview? What are some examples of it? We'll start with theism and maybe go from there.
The different scholars will tweak it a little bit differently, but I basically boil the worldviews down to 3 options. 3 main options with a 4th one that I'll throw in as a kind of a side option. 3 main worldviews that in history. One is, you've already mentioned it, theism, which is the worldview that says that there is a personal God who created the universe out of nothing and created man in his own image. That's and that worldview and some other ideas that go along with it. But that's the main worldview, this worldview called theism that says there's a personal God who creates the world out of nothing. Second worldview is called naturalism, which basically says that all that exists is the natural world. All there is nature. And that has implications for how we know things, and we can get into that a little bit more. But basically all there is nature, and which is essentially atheism.
Sure, okay.
And then third, there's a worldview called pantheism, or sometimes in the West it's the New Age movement, which basically says that God is everything and everything is God. It's a very mystical worldview, very pantheistic, which basically says that God is everything. The trees are God, the rocks are God, the rivers and oceans are God, and best of all, I'm God, right? At least according to that worldview, right?
Okay. Well, that's important because if we can make ourselves God, that is very alluring, is it not?
To many people, it certainly is.
Okay. Because if we can make up our own reality, our own morality, and we don't have this kind of grandfather God sitting over top of us telling us what to do, we feel like we have a lot of freedom. Have you seen that? What has been your experience with maybe what we may call the pride of sinful man in trying to choose his own God, and how they would pick from one of these 3?
I think you're right. You're right on the money there, Robbie. The Christian worldview actually says that when people fell right away from God in the garden so many thousands of years ago, that the reason for that was a desire for autonomy, a desire to be your own God, as you said. And people pursue that autonomy in different ways. Some go all the way and say there is no God, right? And when you say there's no God, then you can make the rules as you will. Some people take various different halfway houses, you might say, of other kinds of false religions, where you have gods that are maybe personal gods, like the Greek pantheon, Zeus and Mars and all those, but they're gods you can manipulate, gods that you can perform the right magic formula and get them to do what you want them to do. And then another step away would be pantheism, which allows everything to be God. Everything is spiritual. Everything is divine, and I'm divine too. And so ultimately, I get to make up the rules and be spiritual at the same time, and not be an atheist. Yeah.